In the world of hip-hop, there are producers and then there are architects. Between 1994 and 1997, one man didn't just make beats, he built an empire. That man was RZA, the mastermind behind the Wu-Tang Clan. During this short explosive window of time, RZA produced and arranged 6 solo albums, each from a different Wu-Tang member, all while planning and executing the group's multi-phase domination of the rap game. But how did he do it? How did one man maintain that kind of focus, creativity, and execution? This is a story of discipline, sacrifice, and obsession. This is how RZA became the monk behind the boards. After the release of Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers in 1983, RZA proposed a radical idea to his brothers. He told them, this wasn't just ego, it was strategy. RZA didn't just want to release solo albums. He wanted to sequence a musical universe where each member's projects felt like an extension of a larger narrative. In his mind, Wu-Tang wasn't just a group, it was a movement. To execute this plan, he demanded full creative control, and incredibly, the clan agreed. For the next 4 years, RZA would enter what he called his mental chamber, isolating himself almost completely to work on his music. RZA's daily routine between 1994 and 1997 was closer to a Shaolin monk than a hip-hop producer. He woke up around 6 a.m., beginning each day with meditation and spiritual study. Whether it was the Quran, Taoist texts, or supreme mathematics, RZA treated his morning like a mental gym. He believed that keeping his mind sharp was just as important as sharpening his drum samples. By 9 a.m., he was in the studio, his basement in Staten Island, known only as the chamber. There were no distractions, no parties, no women, no entourage, just machines, crates of records, and raw vision. He locked in for 12 to 16 hours a day, building drums, flipping obscure soul samples, and directing clan members like a film director. Ghostface Killer once said, RZA ate little, pizza, Chinese takeout, and maybe fruit and water, and that was it. No drugs, no alcohol, just purpose. Now, let's break down each solo album that he recorded from the years 1993 to 1997. Starting off with Method Man's Sakal, which was released in 1994, the first solo album, or the first Wu album from the Wu-Tang Clan. It was a dark, grimy, drenched in reverb. RZA built a sonic dungeon here, using murky drum loops and minimal synths. Tracks like Bring the Pain and Release Yourself felt like a fog on a back alley block. Meth's charisma matched RZA's eerie production perfectly. Now, moving on to Older the Bastards album, Return to the 36 Chambers, the third version, which released in March of 1995. Pure chaos, controlled madness. RZA leaned into ODB's unpredictability, creating beats that felt both ancient and futuristic. Shim Shim Ya became an anthem despite its lo-fi distortion, and that was intentional. It sounded unpolished because it was pure. Now, in August of 1995, Raekwon the Chef released his debut album Only Before Cuban Linx, aka The Purple Tape. Now here, RZA built the mafioso rap bible, sampled strings, cinematic soul flips, and crime-filled ambiance. This album sounded like a score to a Scarface sequel. Songs like Incarcerated Scarfaces and Ice Cream were masterpieces of mood and sequencing. Now, in November 1995, RZA released his second solo album, Liquid Swords, under Wu-Tang Productions, a philosopher's album. RZA brought cold, dystopian soundscapes to match RZA's cerebral bars. Shadowboxing, Fourth Chamber, and Dula Iron Mike remain some of the most quotable tracks in hip-hop history, and RZA's beats are surgical here. Now, in October of 1996, Ghostface Killer released his solo album, Ironman, which was a shift to a more soulful production. RZA laced Ghost, Raekwon, and Capadonna with warmer gospel sampling beats. Tracks like All That God Is You and Daytona 500 show RZA's emotional range and creative flexibility. Now, in June of 1997, the Wu-Tang Clan came back together and released their second album, which was Wu-Tang Forever. The culmination of the 5-year plan, a double album, bigger, denser, and more philosophical. RZA brought in more live instrumentation, more experimentation, and layered mixing. He was no longer just sampling, he was composing. Songs like Triumph and Reunited felt operatic. By 1997, RZA had completed the vision, a saga told through 6 albums, each with its own mood, purpose, and lyrical focus, but all unmistakably Wu-Tang. But greatness never comes without sacrifice. During this era, RZA cut himself off from nearly everything outside of his work. He said he treated the studio like a temple, and the Wu-Tang members followed his lead. But the isolation took its toll. After Wu-Tang Forever, tensions began to grow. Some members wanted more independence, others wanted outside producers. The original plan had ended, and so had RZA's full control. Still, what he's accomplished in those 4 years remains unmatched. From 1994 to 1997, RZA created a creative empire, now with a major label's infrastructure, now with a writing team, but with a raw discipline and visionary focus. He wasn't chasing hits, he was chasing eternity. He created beats like scriptures, albums like scrolls, and artists like disciples from a larger truth. RZA once said, and he did. To this day, Takao, Cuban Linx, Look at Swords, and Ironman are not just rap albums, they're pillars of a mythos. RZA proved that a producer doesn't just make music. A real producer creates a world. So the next time you talk about a legendary run in hip-hop, remember, while other producers were chasing singles, RZA was building scripture. In the early 1990s, Wu-Tang Clan reshaped hip-hop forever. Their raw sound, their street-born philosophy, and their unbreakable brotherhood made them legends. But Wu-Tang Clan wasn't just music, it was a movement, a way of life. And like every movement, it needed more than sound, it needed style. Fans were already making their own bootleg shirts, rocking the W logo like a coat of arms. In New York, in Philly, in LA, wherever the Clan's music spread, so did the image. And that's when Wu-Tang did something no other group had ever done before. They turned their logo into a fashion empire. In 1995, Wu-Wear was born, the first official clothing line, a bold experiment led by Wu-Tang's inner circle to take ownership of the image, to turn street loyalty into a global business. What started as hoodies and t-shirts in a Staten Island shop will soon become a worldwide phenomenon, generating millions, influencing an entire generation of fashion, and proving that hip-hop could dominate more than just the charts. In 1995, Wu-Tang Clan wasn't just a rap group anymore. They were a cultural force. Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers had rewritten the rules of hip-hop, and the solo project flooded the market kept the Wu name in every conversation. But behind the scenes, Oliver Power Grant saw something even bigger on the horizon. Power wasn't just a friend of the clan. He was a business strategist, a visionary who understood the streets and the system. Walking through New York, he noticed bootleggers on every corner sending fake Wu-Tang shirts, hats, and hoodies. The demand was undeniable. Fans weren't waiting for an official product. They were making it themselves. And that's when Power realized if the clan didn't own their image, someone else would. The idea was radical. Hip-hop merch at the time was mostly bootleg tees or concert souvenirs. No group had attempted a legitimate full-scale fashion brand, but Wu-Tang had never followed the rules. With RZA's blessing, Power launched Wu-Wear, the first official hip-hop clothing line. The first store opened in Staten Island, the clan's home turf. It wasn't flashy, just racks of shirts, hoodies, and hats stamped it with the golden Wu-Tang logo, the W. But to fans, it was everything. Walking into that store felt like entering 36 Chambers itself. Buying Wu-Wear wasn't just buying clothing, it was buying membership into a worldwide brotherhood. And word spread fast. From Staten Island to Brooklyn, from Jersey to Philly, Wu-Wear became more than fashion. It was identity. You weren't just wearing a logo, you were repping a philosophy, a lifestyle, a culture that was bigger than music. The mid-90s were hip-hop's golden era, and the Wu-Tang Clan was at its peak. Every year, another Wu solo dropped. Only but for Cuban Linx, Look at Swords, Ironman, Return to the 36 Chambers. Each added fuel to the fire, and as the music expanded, so did Wu-Wear. The Staten Island shop had proved the vision was real. The demand for Wu-Wear or Wu gear was spreading beyond New York, reaching fans who saw the W logo as more than just a design. It was a statement. Power and the Wu capitalized on the hunger. They opened stores in Atlanta, Norfolk, and even overseas in Germany and the Netherlands. Wu-Wear wasn't just a side hustle anymore. It was a global fashion line. At a time when rap fashion barely existed, Wu-Wear stood alone. It wasn't coming from a department stores, wasn't curated by fashion houses. It was raw, straight from the streets, directly tied to the music. Fans who couldn't afford concert tickets or rare vinyl could still feel connected to the movement by rocking a hoodie or a cap, and that made Wu-Wear unstoppable. By 1997, Wu-Wear was everywhere. The clothes showed up in music videos, on tour stages, and on street corners from New York to Tokyo. Celebrities and athletes wore it. Regular kids wore it, and the logo itself, the golden W, had become one of the most recognizable symbols in pop culture. For the first time in history, hip-hop fashion wasn't just being borrowed by mainstream culture. Hip-hop was dictating the style. What started as an experiment had become a multi-million-dollar business. Wu-Wear was no longer just an accessory to the music. It was a movement on its own, standing shoulder to shoulder with the clan's legendary sound. Wu-Tang had proven that hip-hop could dominate not just the charts, but the clothing racks as well. By the late 1990s, Wu-Wear had become more than just streetwear brand. It was a global business empire. What started as hoodies and t-shirts in a Staten Island shop was now pulling in over $25 million annually. For a hip-hop group, that was unheard of. Rappers sold records, Wu-Tang sold a lifestyle. The success came from aggressive expansion. Wu-Wear locked in deals that put their clothes in malls and department stores across America. Suddenly, you could find Wu-Wear on racks next to Tommy Hilfiger and Polo Ralph Lauren. It wasn't just underground anymore. It was mainstream. This was revolutionary. Before Rockaware, before Sean John, before G-Unit clothing, Wu-Wear proved that hip-hop could build fashion empires. The Golden W wasn't just a logo, it was currency. Jeans, jackets, sneakers, backpacks, all stamped with the Clan's logo, turned everyday fans into walking billboards for the Wu movement. But with growth comes challenges. The market was flooded with counterfeits. Bootleg Wu-Wear appeared in street markets worldwide, undercutting the brand's credibility. And as department stores embraced the line, same diehard fans felt the style was losing its edge. Wu-Wear had gone from being a secret code of the streets to a global commodity. Success was a double-edged sword. Still, at its heights, Wu-Wear proved what was possible when hip-hop owned its own image. This wasn't just about clothes, it was about independence, about taking control of branding, creating wealth outside of record sales, and showing that hip-hop was bigger than music. By the late 1990s, Wu-Wear had grown from a small hustler-minded idea to a multi-million-dollar fashion empire. What started as a way for Wu-Tang to wear their own gear on stage had now evolved into one of the first true hip-hop lifestyle brands. Stores began popping up not only in New York, but in major cities across America: Atlanta, Los Angeles, Houston, and soon the influence reached overseas. Wu-Wear stores opened in Europe with strongholds in London, Paris, and even Germany, where hip-hop culture was exploding. For the first time, a rap group's clothing line was competing with established streetwear brands and even creeping into mainstream malls. Wu-Tang had tapped into something bigger than music. The clothing line wasn't just about merchandise, it was about identity. When you wore a Wu-Tang hoodie or a cap, you weren't just repping the clan, you were declaring your membership in a worldwide movement. For fans as far as Japan and Brazil, Wu-Wear became a badge of belonging, a symbol that hip-hop culture wasn't just American, it was global. The money followed fast. By the peak of his own expansion, Wu-Wear was pulling in tens of millions of dollars annually. Licensing deals, retail distribution, and wholesale orders kept the brand moving. The clothing line had carved out space next to giants like Fubu, Karl Kani, and Phat Farm. Brands that will also define the golden age of hip-hop fashion. But the Wu-Wear has something those other brands didn't: the mythology of Wu-Tang. The brand wasn't just tied to a rapper, it was tied to an entire universe, a martial arts-inspired dynasty that fans will immerse themselves in. Wu-Wear also broke barriers in advertising. Instead of glossing campaigns with models, Wu-Tang themselves became the models. Music videos doubled as fashion showcases. Album covers displayed the gear, and the streets became the runway. If you saw Method Man rocking a Wu-Wear leather jacket in an interview, you knew fans would be lining up to buy the same one the next week. The expansion cemented Wu-Wear as more than a clothing line. It was proof that hip-hop could build self-sustaining ecosystems. Music sold clothes, clothes sold identity, identity fueled loyalty, and loyalty kept the machine alive. The clan has successfully created a blueprint that countless artists will follow later, from Jay-Z with Rockaware to Diddy with Sean John, and 50 Cent with G-Unit clothing. But before all of them, there was Wu-Wear. Every empire faces its test. For Wu-Wear, the late 1990s and the early 2000s brought both success and struggle. While the brand had reached global recognition, cracks began to show beneath the surface. One of the biggest challenges Wu-Wear faced was oversaturation. The very thing that made the brand so accessible, its wide distribution, also weakened its exclusivity. Wu-Wear began showing up not just in boutique stores or official Wu outlets, but in mall retailers and discount shops. To hardcore fans, the gear no longer felt rare or special. What once symbolized authenticity was now at risk of becoming just another clothing label in a crowded market. And then came the knockoffs. Bootleggers saw the popularity of the Wu logo and flooded the streets with fake Wu-Wear gear. For every authentic Wu-Wear hoodie, there were dozens of counterfeits being sold at flea markets and corner shops. Internally, Wu-Wear also faced the challenge of keeping up with the fashion trends. Streetwear was evolving. Brands like Rockaware, Sean John, and later Echo became dominating the hip-hop clothing scene with sleeker designs, high-budget campaigns, and mainstream partners. Compared to them, Wu sometimes looked stuck in the early era of baggy hoodies and oversized jeans. There were also the weight of Wu-Tang itself. By the early 2000s, the group was no longer operating with the same unity that fueled their early success. Solo careers, label disputes, and creative differences built into the public eye. And when the music stopped being played on the radios, Wu eventually suffered. After all, the clothing line was built on the strength of the Wu-Tang brand. And if the brand seems fractured, so did the fashion. Financially, the strain became clear. Wu stores began closing. The once booming expansion slowed. What had been a revolutionary movement in hip-hop fashion now risked fading into nostalgia. Fans still loved the Wu, but the clothing no longer carried the same culture weight it once did. By the mid-2000s, Wu had eventually disappeared from the mainstream market. The logo was still iconic, the legacy undeniable, but the empire had shrunk back into the shadows. The clan had proven what wasn't possible, but sustaining it was another battle altogether. Though Wu faded from storefronts in the mid-2000s, its impact never disappeared. The brand had already etched itself into hip-hop history as the first true rap-driven clothing empire. Before Rocawear, before Sean John, before billionaire boys clubs, there were Wu, and its blueprint was clear. Build your music into a lifestyle, then build our lifestyle into economy. Wu influence can be seen everywhere. When Jay-Z and Dame Dash launched Rocawear, they followed Wu's example of turning album promotion into fashion promotion. When Diddy built Sean John into a billion-dollar company, the foundation already been tested by the Wu. Even newer streetwear juggernauts like Supreme and Off-White owe something to Wu strategy, bridging underground culture with global commerce. But Wu wasn't just about money or trends. Its legacy was identity. It gave fans a way to live Wu-Tang beyond the music, to wear the culture on their backs. For many, Wu-Tang or Wu was the first introduction to hip-hop fashion as something more than just style. It was rebellion, community, and mythology stitched into fabric. Today, Wu is more than clothing. It's history, it's legacy, it's the living embodiment of what happens when music, business, and culture collide. Wu-Tang showed the world that hip-hop could build empires, and Wu remains a physical proof. From the rise, to the fall, to the revival, one truth remains clear. Wu was never just fashion. Wu was the future. In the early 1990s, hip-hop was evolving, but Staten Island was still a forgotten corner of New York City. From these streets emerged 9 young men with a vision to change the game forever. They called themselves the Wu-Tang Clan, and with their raw lyricism, cinematic storytelling, and philosophy rooted in martial arts, they became legends. But the story didn't end there. The Wu-Tang Clan influence spread like wildfire. Beyond the original 9, a network of artists known as the Killer Bees began to rise. Groups like Son of Man, Killer Army, Wu Syndicate, and artists like Killer Priest, Shaheem, and the LA Darkman carried the Wu-Tang philosophy in every corner of hip-hop. This is the story of the Wu-Tang affiliates, the compilations, the albums, the solo careers, and the hive of talent that expanded the Wu-Tang legacy beyond imagination. The Wu-Tang Clan arrived in the early 1990s like a thunderstorm over Staten Island, raw, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers was more than an album. It was a declaration for war on the mainstream, a blueprint for how hip-hop could be martial arts, cinematic, and streetwise. But RZA, the de facto architect of the clan, understood something crucial. This was never about 9 men alone. The Wu-Tang Clan was a seed, and its influence needed to grow. He began assembling a network of artists, friends, and prodigies who shared the same vision, who could extend the clan's philosophy into corners of hip-hop they didn't have conquered yet. These artists became known as the Killer Bees. Among the earliest and most prominent affiliates with Killer Priest, his words was dense, spiritual, often biblical, yet grounded in the harsh realities of urban life. Killer Priest didn't just rhyme, he preached, and he forced listeners to think beyond the streets. Then there were Sons of Man, comprised of talented lyricists like Prodigal Son and Hellraiser. Their music blended street grit with metaphysical themes, questioning morality, loyalty, and destiny, all while staying unmistakably connected to the Wu-Tang lineage. Next is Shaheem, aka the Rugged Child, aka the Young God, burst onto the scene at just 14 years old. His youthful energy matched with lyrical skill that was beyond his age. Killer Army brought a militant intensity, their verses painting tactical battles with urban warfare and cinematic detail. LA the Darkman carved his own niche, combining street storytelling with heist-inspiring narratives. Wu Syndicate brought a southern flavor, demonstrating that the Wu influence was not confined to New York City. Even the American Cream Team, a tight-knit collective including Lord Superb and Chip Banks, added another layer to its growing hive of talent. These artists weren't merely underlings or side projects. They were extensions of the Wu-Tang vision. Each lyric, each verse, each album was a testament to the philosophy of the clan: loyalty, discipline, and mastery of the craft. Together, the affiliates transformed Wu-Tang from a group into a movement, from Staten Island legends into a nationwide unstoppable force. By the mid-1990s, the Killer Bees were no longer in the shadows. By the late 1990s, the Wu-Tang Clan had firmly established itself as a powerhouse, but RZA knew that the movement needed more than solo albums. It needed a platform where the extended family, the Killer Bees, could shine. The answer came in the form of compilation albums, a new vehicle to showcase talent, build networks, and solidify the clan's empire. In 1998, the Wu-Tang Clan Killer Bees, The Swarm, arrived. It was more than a record. It was a statement, featuring tracks from Killer Priest, Sons of Man, Shaheem, Wu Syndicate, and Killer Army. It demonstrated that the Wu-Tang influence extended for beyond the original 9. The album captured the energy of a collective at the peak of creativity, each verse like a soldier marching in formation, each chorus echoing in the philosophy of the clan: discipline, loyalty, and lyrical mastery. Then came Wu Chronicles in 1999, a carefully curated collection of solo tracks and affiliate collaborations. Unlike a standard compilation, this album acted as a bridge. It connected listeners to the broader Wu-Tang universe, introducing lesser-known artists while highlighting the established voices. Follows up Wu-Tang Chronicles Chapter 2, released in 2001, reinforced the message: the hive was growing, and every member, every affiliate had a place in the story. Finally, in 2011, Wu-Tang First and Shaolin offered a retrospective vision. By combining classic clan tracks with affiliate contributions, it reminded fans that the Wu-Tang narrative was not limited to original 9. It was a philosophy, a movement, and a network that thrived on collaborations and mentorship. These compilations weren't just albums. They were a blueprint, a way of expanding the influence of the Wu-Tang Clan while giving its affiliates a platform to define their own identities. Through these projects, Killer Priest, Sons of Man, Shaheem, Killer Army, Ellie the Dark Man, Wu Syndicate, and even the American Cream Team found their voices amplified. Tracks that might have been buried in the solo efforts now reached a larger audience, reinforcing the clan's philosophy. It was never about one person. It was about the collective. The compilations became the hive's heartbeat, the proof that the Killer Bees weren't just a side story. They were a force unto themselves. In the end, these albums did more than showcase talent. They built community, solidified loyalty, and broadcasted the Wu-Tang way to the world, a philosophy of unity, mastery, and artistic excellence that extended for beyond Staten Island. By the turn of the new millennium, the Wu-Tang Clan's extended family had fully emerged. The Killer Bees were no longer shadows in the background. They were artists, leaders, and the innovators in their own right, each contributing to the vast, sprawling legacy of the clan. Killer Priest was among the first to define what it was to be an affiliate. His debut album, Heavy Mental, was audacious, spiritual, and cerebral. Priest's verses drew from scripture, history, and street life, created a lyrical landscape that challenged listeners to think, reflect, and question. In doing so, he set a standard for what an affiliate could achieve: depth, philosophy, and street credibility all in one. Sons of Man followed, blending gritty urban narratives with metaphysical exploration. Their debut album in 1998, The Last Shall Be First, was a testament to the clan's influence. The production carried RZA's signature cinematic touch, while the lyrics navigated morality, loyalty, and destiny. They showed that the Wu-Tang philosophy could be interpreted in diverse ways, yet remain unmistakably connected to the hive. Killer Army brought a different energy. Their albums, Silent Weapons of a Quiet Wars and Dirty Weaponry, were militant, tactical, and apologetically aggressive. They weren't just rapping, they were painting battle scenes, choreographing urban warfare through lyrics. The group became known for their cohesion, discipline, and unwavering allegiance to the Wu-Tang vision. Then there was L.A. the Dark Man. With Heist of the Century, he delivered street stories wrapped in cinematic detail, plots, schemes, and character-driven narratives that elevated him from affiliate to storyteller extraordinaire. Wu Syndicate, hailing from Virginia, added a regional flavor, bridges the East Coast grit with Southern nuances, proving the Wu-Tang influence could transcend geography. Shaheem, aka the Rugged Child, had already made his mark as a prodigy. By this time, he was maturing as an artist, maintaining the delicate balance between youthful energy and lyrical sophistication, a testament to the mentorship and guidance of the clan. Even collectives like the American Cream Team, including artists such as Lord Superb and Chip Banks, contributed to the Hive expansion, solidifying a network of artists who upheld the Wu-Tang's ethos. Each album, each contribution, each collaboration, each verse, the affiliates were not just supporting acts, they were essential components of the Wu-Tang empire. By the mid-2000s, it was clear the Wu-Tang Clan had transcended its original form. The affiliates were no longer secondary, they were the movement's lifeline, the lifeblood, expanding the clan's influence across regions, sounds, and generations. Together, the Killer Bees had created a legacy that was bigger, bolder, and more enduring than anyone could imagine. Some affiliates rose to fame quickly, others quietly built their reputations, adding depth and diversity to the Wu-Tang Hive. These were the unsung Killer Bees, artists and collectives who reinforced the clan's philosophy even if they never achieved mainstream recognition. The American Cream Team was one of these pivotal groups, comprised of artists like Lord Superb and Chip Banks. The collective brought a raw, underground energy to the Wu-Tang network. Their music was unpolished but authentic, steeped in street narratives, loyalty, and a clear connection to the clan's ethos. Though their name may not appear on every fan's radar, their influence within the Hive was undeniable. Brooklyn Zoo, another affiliate collective, carried the Staten Island flavor across the East Coast. Members like Trife Diesel and 12 O'Clock contributed verses to solo Wu-Tang projects, connecting local audiences to the broader movement. Their presence illustrated a crucial truth. The Wu-Tang philosophy wasn't confined to the original 9. It was a decentralized network of family with branches across cities and regions. Other lesser-known affiliates, artists like Roy Fam, North Star, demonstrated the flexibility and the reach of the Wu-Tang empire. Each brought their own regional flavor, lyrical style, and storytelling approach, yet all adhered to the principles of discipline, loyalty, and creative excellence that RZA instilled. Even beyond music, these unsung Killer Bees contributed to the mythology of Wu-Tang. They participated in tours, collaborations, and compilation albums, lending credibility and vibrancy to the Hive. They were the hidden threads that reinforced the structure, ensuring that the Wu-Tang legacy was more than just a group. It was a movement, a philosophy, a blueprint for collective success. The unsung Killer Bees reminded us that in the world of Wu-Tang, success isn't always measured by chart positions or commercial acclaim. Sometimes it's measured by loyalty, contributions to the movement, and the preservation of a culture that continues to influence generations of artists worldwide. By the early 2000s, the Wu-Tang Clan had transformed from a 9-man group into a sprawling movement. But it was the affiliates, the Killer Bees, who truly demonstrated the scope of their influence through albums, collaborations, and relentless creativity. They carried the Wu-Tang philosophy across the globe. Killer Priest, Sons of Man, Killer Army, Shaheem, Ellie the Darkman, Wu Syndicate, the American Cream Team, and countless others weren't just prodigies. They were the ambassadors of a culture. They just kept the fame alive, pushing boundaries in lyricism, production, and storytelling, while maintaining the integrity and discipline of the clan. The collective output proved that the Wu-Tang wasn't just a group. It was a network, a hive, a living organism that grew stronger with each new voice. The impact of the affiliates can be felt in multiple ways. Musically, they introduced new sounds, regional styles, and lyrical perspectives, enriching hip-hop's vocabulary. They inspired countless artists who recognized that the success didn't require following the mainstream. Creativity, loyalty, and vision could build a legacy. Culturally, the affiliates helped make Wu-Tang a household name, reinforcing the philosophy that the clan's influence extended far beyond Staten Island or its original 9 members. Even today, the ripple effects are visible. Modern hip-hop collectives, underground movements, and solo artists are inspiration from the Killer Bees model, a family of like-minded artists working together, supporting one another, and building a dynasty through collaboration and shared vision. The Wu-Tang Clan laid the foundation, but the affiliates expanded the empire, proving that the true influence is measured by not only the fame, but by the enduring impact on culture, creativity, and community. Ultimately, the Wu-Tang Clan affiliates ensured that the story of the clan was bigger than any one album, bigger than any one city and bigger than any one generation. They turned vision into a movement, a group into a network, and a sound into a worldwide cultural phenomenon. The Killer Bees were and remain the lifeblood of the Wu-Tang Clan legacy. In 1997, the Wu-Tang Clan was no longer just a name whispered in the corners of New York City. They were everywhere, from the project of Staten Island to college dorms in Tokyo. Wu had become a worldwide symbol of lyrical warfare, brotherhood, and a business model no one in hip-hop has ever seen before. Now, Wu-Tang Forever has just dropped a double album, 27 tracks, platinum in a week. Critics were stunned, fans were loyal, and the industry had no idea what was coming next, because while other crews might have slowed down to celebrate, the Clan did the opposite. They expanded again. Only this time, it wasn't just a few solo albums. This was the second wave. These are the albums where Wu-Tang's generals fully stepped into their own world. Some evolved, some reinvented, and some struggled, but all of them told us one thing: Wu-Tang wasn't done. They were just getting started. On June 3rd of 1997, the double album Wu-Tang Forever crashed into the Billboard 200 at number 1, selling over 600,000 copies in its first week. A 2-disc, 27-track album. It wasn't just a sequel to 36 Chambers, it was a declaration. Wu-Tang wasn't just here to stay, they were here to dominate. Now RZA, aka the Abbot, took the group's production into darker, more cinematic territory, on where the dusty basement-style loops of 1993. Now you had layered strings, area pianos, and soundscapes that felt like they were ripped from the martial arts epic and dropped in the middle of a grimy New York alley. It was the sound of Shaolin with churn. Tracks like Triumph, a 6-minute barrage with no hook, showed the Clan wasn't bending to the industry rules. Every member was on the track and they sharpened their swords. Inspector Deck's legendary opener, Ghostface Killer's vivid slang, Jizz's precision, Meth's charisma, even Capadonna, now a semi-official 10th member, getting his shine. And the results, over 4 million copies sold in the US alone. Grammy nominations, world tours, merchandise deals. Wu was now more than a rap group. They were a brand. But here's the thing: Forever wasn't the end of the story. It was a launch pad, because after Forever, the RZA's 5-year plan entered the second act, the second wave of solo projects. Each general and even the affiliates stepping out to build their own empires and test the strengths of their name without the safety net of the whole clan. And first up was the man with the golden voice and the smoky charisma, Method Man. 4 years after the release of Takao, Method Man returned with something different. November 17th of 1998, Takao 2000, Judgment Day hits the shelves, and it wasn't just an album, it was a movie in audio form. Album was drenched in apocalyptic energy, skits, sound effects, and a theme that felt like the end of the world was here, and Meth was our tour guide through the chaos. With RZA, True Master, Fourth Disciple, and Mathematics behind the boards, the production was dense, layered, and often haunting. This wasn't your typical late 90s shiny suit rap. Judgment Day debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and quickly went platinum, proving that Meth's charisma and star power were strong enough to carry even the most experimental concepts. Tracks like Judgment Day, Dangerous Grounds, and Breakups and Makeups featuring D'Angelo showed different sides of him, ranging from aggressive battle raps to soulful confessionals. But the real standout was Meth's presence. He could be playful, threatening, and seductive, sometimes all in the same verse. And while some critics called the album too long, too heavy on skits, or too concept-driven, Wu fans appreciated it as an experience more than just a playlist of songs. Meth's second album wasn't just about chasing radio hits, it was about building a world. And in the Wu-Tang blueprint, that mattered. Because a Wu album wasn't just a product, it was a chamber, a self-contained universe that fed back into the mythos of the clan. But while Meth's return felt like a blockbuster, the next general to step out had something different in mind: Raekwon the Chef. He was about to test the waters without the RZA. November 16th of 1999, Raekwon the Chef returns to the solo kitchen. But this time, there's a key ingredient missing. 4 years earlier, Raekwon dropped Only But For Cuban Linx, a cinematic masterpiece forged in RZA's Sonic Dojo. That album alone set the bar for Wu-Tang's solo efforts. So when fans heard Ray's second LP and Mobilarity, they expected more Purple Tape magic. Instead, they got a different recipe. For the first time ever, RZA was absent from the core Wu-Tang solo album. Instead, Ray enlisted producers like the Infinite Architects, 6 July, and Easy LP. The sound was cleaner, less dusty, more polished, but that also meant it lacked the raw grit that RZA's beats brought to the Cuban Linx. Lyrically, Ray was still in top form, spinning street narratives, hustler philosophies, and coded slang. Tracks like Live from New York and All I Got Is You Part 2 showed his pen was sharp, but the cohesion that glue RZA always brought wasn't there, and fans noticed it fast. Critics were split. Some appreciated Ray's attempt to expand beyond the Wu's formula. Others saw it as proof of just how much RZA's production was tied to the Clan's magic. Commercially, it didn't match the success of his debut album, but it still solidified Ray's reputation as a top-tier storyteller, even without the Abbot behind him. In hindsight, Immobilarity was a pivotal moment. It proved the Wu's general could operate outside the traditional sound, though not without risk. And while Ray's second effort didn't match his first, it set the stage for his eventual return to form years later. But if Ray's follow-up left fans conflicted, the next general's second album will blow the doors off the hinges. Ghostface Killah was about to drop one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. On February 8th of 2000, Ghostface Killah steps back into the spotlight for his second solo mission. His debut album, Ironman, had been a fan favorite, but Supreme Clientele, that would become legend. From the moment Nutmeg kicks off, it's clear Ghost is operating on a whole different frequency. His slang is dense, his imagery surreal, his emotion raw. He wasn't just rapping, he was painting movie murals with words. Part of the magic came from the beats. While RZA was still at the helm for several tracks, One, Mighty Healthy, Stroke of Death, he also let in other producers like Mathematics, Juju from Beatnuts, Carlos Best, and The Blacksmiths. The result, an album that sounded timeless but still undeniably Wu. Ghost took risks. Apollo Kids was a full-on braggadocious anthem. Child's Play was pure nostalgia, and We Made It, featuring Ghost in reflective mode, proved he could go beyond street tales into full storytelling mastery. Critics didn't just like Supreme Clientele, they worshipped it. Many called it the best hip-hop album for the year, and some the best Wu release since 36 Chambers. Ghost's charisma, unpredictability, and unmatched slang cemented his place as the Clan's most colorful MC. Commercially, it went gold. Culturally, it went immortal. Ghostface became a hip-hop folk hero, someone who could carry the Wu flag even as the industry shifted into a new millennium. But Ghost wasn't the only one going up in this era. An affiliate, already a fan favorite from Ice Cream and Went to Wars, was about to drop his debut album, and he came swinging for the fences. Enter Capadonna. On March 24th of 1998, the unofficial 10th member of Wu-Tang Clan finally steps out with his first solo album, The Pillage. Capadonna wasn't just stepping into the ring, he was ready to claim his spot. Capadonna's rise had been gradual. Known for standout verses on tracks like Winter Wars and Ice Cream, he brought a uniquely off-kiltered, almost hypnotic flow that both intrigued and challenged listeners. The Pillage took that raw energy and stretched it into a full narrative. Produced largely by the RZA and True Master, the album was a classic Wu mix of sinister melodies, sharp drums, and cinematic skits. Tracks like Slang Editorial and Run showcase Cap's storytelling, gritty tales from the streets with an unusual cadence that demanded attention. Critics were mixed. Some found his style abrasive and unpolished, but the hardcore Wu fans saw something else: authenticity. The Pillage went gold, a major accomplishment for a debut album, proved that even on the fringes of the Clan, the Wu magic ran deep. Cap was loud, proud, and unapologetic himself, a perfect complement to the Clan's diverse roster. While not a commercial juggernaut, the Pillage solidified him as a unique voice in the Wu dynasty, a wild card that kept the group's sound unpredictable and alive. But while Capadonna was bringing raw street grit, another general was quietly ready in his debut album. U-God, the Golden Arm Warrior, stepped into the spotlight with Golden Arms Redemption. On October 19th of 1999, U-God, one of the Wu-Tang's most underrated voices, finally steps in the solo spotlight with Golden Arms Redemption. After years of heavy Wu contributions, it was time for the Golden Arm Warrior to tell his own story. U-God's style was instantly recognizable, deep, commanding, and slightly gravelly, but his debut album was more than just his voice. It was an effort to showcase versatility as both a lyricist and a storyteller, while still firmly rooted into the grimy Wu-Tang sound. The production came largely from RZA and True Master, with Inspector Deck also contributing. The beats were dark, moody, and cinematic, perfectly matching U-God's style. Songs like That's Gangsta and Bizarre stood out for their street narratives and catchy hooks. Commercially, Golden Arms Redemption didn't make a huge wave, but it went on to earn respect among hardcore fans who appreciated his raw energy and authenticity. It was a sound for a warrior claiming his redemption, not with flash, but with steady strength. In the crowded world of Wu's solo projects, Yu-Ga's debut album proved that he wasn't just a supporting character, he was a vital piece of the puzzle. His album was a reminder that every general in the clan had a unique voice worth hearing. Next up though is the rebel INS himself, Inspector Deck, finally dropping his long-awaited debut album, Uncontrolled Substance. On October 5th of 1999, Inspector Deck, the lyrical assassin known for his opening triumph verse with one of the greatest verses in hip-hop history, finally released his debut solo album, Uncontrolled Substance. Deck's journey to solo superstardom was anything but smooth. His album was set to drop in 1995, but a studio flooded destroyed much of the original material, forcing him to start over. But when it finally arrived 4 years later, fans got a record full of sharp bars and rugged production. Unlike previous Wu-Tang solo albums, this album didn't have that much production from the RZA, just one track he did. Instead, Dex tapped into the mix of producers, including Pete Rock, Fourth Disciple, and The Mathematics, giving the album a unique but cohesive sound. Lyrically, Deck was in top form, delivering razor-sharp punchlines, intricate wordplay, and vivid street tales. Songs like Word on the Street, Movers and Shakers, and Show and Proof highlight his ability to command attention with every line. Though the album didn't achieve massive commercial success, it solidified Inspector Deck as a solo artist with serious lyrical prowess, capable of carrying his own project without leaning heavily on the Wu brand. In the Wu-Tang universe, Deck's Uncontrolled Substance was a testament to patience and skill, proof that sometimes the sharpest weapons take the longest to polish. And finally, the man behind the boards, the mastermind himself, the RZA, steps into his own spotlight with a solo album unlike anything the Wu has ever seen. November 24th of 1998, the RZA, the mastermind, the Abbot, the sonic architect of Wu-Tang, unleashes his solo debut under the alter ego Bobby Digital. And this wasn't just an album, it was a science fiction saga set to music. Gone were the dusty samples and kung fu saw of classic Wu. Instead, Digital Bobby, or Bobby Digital, was a bold leap into the future. Futuristic beats, electronic textures, and abstract storytelling. RZA crafted a concept album that followed the adventures of the digital alter ego in a cybernetic world. Tracks like Bobby Digital in stereo and Love Jones showcase a playful yet dark RZA, wrestling with themes of temptations, identity, and survival in a technological landscape. The album was chaotic, unpredictable, and unlike anything hip-hop has ever seen. Critics were divided though. Some applauded the innovation and risk-taking, others found it confusing or unfocused. But fans of RZA's visionary style embraced it as another piece of Wu-Tang's puzzle, an evolution of his creative expression beyond group boundaries. With Bobby Digital in stereo, RZA didn't just drop an album, he expanded the Wu-Tang's universe, proving that even the clan's leader was unafraid to experiment and redefine what hip-hop could be. By 1999, every Wu-Tang member had carved out their own lane, and while Method Man had the charisma, Ghostface had the emotion, and Raekwon had the crime sagas, RZA was the professor, the quiet intellectual who turned verses into lecture. Released on June 29th of 1999, Beneath the Surface came 4 years after the critically acclaimed Liquid Swords. It wasn't a flashy return, it was a calculated one. The production was mainly handled by Mathematics with contributions from the RZA and other Wu affiliates, creating a stripped-down, almost skeletal sound. This was a thinking man's record. On tracks like Amplified Sample, RZA spit with trademark precision, weaving layered wordplay over dusty beats. Publicity turned media outlets into chess pieces, while Crash Your Crew brought a darker, more aggressive energy. Beneath the Surface didn't try to catch radio hits or chase them either. It was a deliberate album for the core Wu-Tang audience, those who value lyricism over trends. And in a year when mainstream rap was getting shinier and glossier, RZA doubled down on the shadows. It was proof that the RZA didn't need to reinvent himself, he just needed to keep sharpening his sword. Now, if Return to the Thirstiest Chambers was a chaotic gospel, then Nigga Please was the book of revelations, unpredictable, surreal, and impossible to ignore. Released on September 14th of 1999, Nigga Please dropped right in the middle of ODB's most infamous period. The arrest, the wild TV appearances, the moment that made headlines, All of it bled into the music. The production lineup was wild. RZA, Gotti, the Neptunes, and DJ Premier all brought different flavors, but somehow it still felt like ODB's universe. Tracks like Got Your Money with Kellis became instant anthems, blending the Neptunes bounce with Dirty's off-kilter delivery. Then you had Cold Blooded, a bizarre Rick James cover that no one else in hip-hop would have even attempted, let alone pull off. Every song felt like it was teetered on the edge of falling apart, yet ODB's raw magnetism kept it together. Lyrically, it wasn't about polished verses, it was about energy, emotion, and pure personality. And in the end era, obsessed with polish, Nigga Please was gloriously unfiltered. ODB's unpredictable, but on this album, that unpredictability became the art form. It wasn't a safe record, but it was one that captured exactly who he was in that moment, a wild card in a deck of masters. Together, these albums, the second wave of Wu-Tang solo projects, paint a picture of a group that refused to rest on past glory. They pushed boundaries, explored new sounds, and solidified their legacy, not just as a collective, but as individual forces shaping hip-hop's future. Wu-Tang Forever was more than an album. It was a declaration of power. And the second wave, it was a proving ground, a testament to strength, diversity, and unstoppable creativity of the clan's members. 10 swords, 10 stories, each cutting deep in hip-hop's history.